The coordinator carousel continues to churn, this time hitting Ohio State. Chip Kelly taking a job for a lot of money with the Las Vegas Raiders to call plays out there as the OC. So what's next for Ohio State? Who should be the next guy? We actually have a take on this that we'll tell you in a matter of moments. Before we get to that, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're a college football sicko, you're watching a college football video in the month of February, so you probably are a sicko. Make sure you're subscribed. It's Ball, Nothing But Ball all year round on this channel, on this show. We appreciate you in advance for that. So this was always the plan for Chip Kelly. Ryan Day, I believe, said as much in a conversation with Joel Klatt, but it was very one-and-done-ish when you think about the college basketball world and how this move correlates to that. It would have been awesome if John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins had said, you know what, let's run it back for 2, maybe 3 years at Kentucky, win a couple of natties, but they had to go pro. For Chip Kelly, it would have been so dope for him to say, you know what, I just want to chill in Columbus for like the next 3 to 4 years. Me and my guy, Ryan Day, my former player, I want us to go just win a bunch of natties together, and I'll be the OC, and it'll be great. It's like, it'd be awesome, but we all know Chip Kelly has aspirations to coach in the NFL, and now he's going to go do that yet again. So it would have been nice to keep this thing together, but I don't think anybody in that building in Columbus is like, gosh, we just feel blindsided by this. We didn't see this coming. So it's unfortunate. But again, it's sort of just the nature of the beast. Let me be very clear. This is not a small loss by any stretch of the imagination. You do not minimize losing a Chip Kelly. Even though you might have seen it coming, this is not a little hole to have to fill now with what he brought to the table. Cato and I were talking before this show, getting our thoughts together, and there's a lot of games you could point to where Chip Kelly was the difference. The Penn State game, remember how Frankensteinish that offensive line was going into the Penn State game with how good that defensive line was? And we're all saying, I don't know if can Ohio State run the football. They got to get creative, got to find ways. And on that day, they had a huge day on the ground. Why? Creative with the play calling, found a way to attack weak spots in the defense, a lot of perimeter runs, the Chip Kelly masterclass. End of the Texas game. It's kind of going not back and forth so much, but Ohio State sort of lost their gas offensively in the middle part of that game. Then towards the end of the game, you see Chip Kelly start dialing up the quarterback runs. Got a little bit of a sleight of hand sort of play to Mekik Buka around the perimeter. Like there were plays so clearly where you could point to and say, that was Chip Kelly. That is the play caller. That is the offensive mastermind. That is him making the difference in that spot. You point to the playoff run as a whole. I think the way the offense got more aggressive. Now, everyone deserves credit from a Jeremiah Smith to Will Howard and all that, but I think Chip Kelly turning up the heat a little bit and being more aggressive. That last big play, the national title game where they go over the top of Jeremiah Smith, like, again, you have Chip Kelly's fingerprints all over this national title run, to be clear. So while it's not a small loss, I also don't think that at a place like Ohio State, you are somehow in a wanting position so much when it comes to your offensive coordinator. Like what I mean by that is I said the same thing about the DC spot when that became available when Jim Knowles took the Penn State job. My comp there was Ohio State's like a mansion, and having to hire a DC in that context was like having to remodel the kitchen. It's a pain. It's not fun to do. It's kind of agonizing in a lot of ways, but you have a big budget. You're Ohio State. You're probably good for it, and you can find a way to make that work. This, to me, is like remodeling the living room in a mansion. Roll with me here. Same deal. Big budget. You're still Ohio State. Still a nice house. You have a lot of furniture you can rearrange here in-house. We'll talk about in a second to kind of make it work. It will be a little bit more splashy, though. You walk into Ohio State in the context of this metaphor, and you're like, okay, they've always been a force offensively. Even in years where they weren't winning the national championship, we still talk about quarterback play. We talk about the receivers. We talk about what they were doing when it comes to points per game. Like it's a lot of ways, at least I would say the last few seasons, kind of been the front porch, living room, if you will, of what Ohio State has been. So it will be more splashy, and it probably will be more noticeable, especially with all the pieces you lose from last year's squad, from a Nagbuka to a Howard to both your running backs, all that considered. Now, my opinion as to who I think should be the next guy when it comes to the OC position in Columbus, I think it's Brian Hartline, wide receivers coach for Ohio State. Whenever you win a national championship, regardless of who you are, I am very big on keeping what worked from that national title in-house as much the same as possible. Like Brian Hartline was around for that entire run. He's been around for some of the runs that haven't been as successful as well when it comes to what they expect at Ohio State. But that's a guy who, quite frankly, if it's not now, when is he going to be given the play calling responsibilities? I mentioned best wide receiver coach in America. You have the oversight of a Ryan Day who has experience calling plays in himself. That's how he cut his teeth. And you have the, I guess, backstop of what he brings to the table to try and keep things similar. He's a guy that I think when you look to his future, I believe he has aspirations to eventually be a head coach. I think that's not necessarily a stretch when you talk about the jobs that his name seems to be mentioned with in terms of, different availabilities and things of that nature. So what I'm trying to say here is for Ohio, it's not like you make this move to keep him happy, but I do think it makes a lot of sense for his career for this to be the next step with all that they have for next year. That's the other part I want to say with this. Even if Chip Kelly stayed your OC next season, it was going to have to look different because of all that you lost. Now, you would prefer that you had Chip Kelly coming back just by nature of his experience, but it was going to have to be a little bit different. So the fact that you have different personnel next year and have to go with a different OC, I think a guy that knows your personnel as well as anybody is Brian Hartline. I love that move. Would you have liked to have someone to be kind of a quarterback whisperer to bring along a Julian Sand or Lincoln Kienholz? Yeah, maybe so. But that's sort of Ryan Day's bag too, isn't it? That's kind of his background, isn't it? I don't think you're left wanting more in that department, regardless of who's your starter next year, even with your receiver coach now elevating to being your play caller. Another name you could sell me on is Jason Candle, the Toledo head coach. I could see that, but I just keep going back to this. When it worked to the degree of getting a national championship, I like to promote people on my staff to then elevated positions to try and keep things, again, from a temperature perspective, from a competitive environment point of view, as much the same as possible. So when you look to the future now for Ohio State, expectations aren't changing. I don't know what Vegas says when it comes to national title odds for next year. Ohio State was previously the shortest odds. I wonder if this will change that at all. I don't think it'll change the expectations, though, in Columbus. Yes, all those pieces are gone. Your DC is gone. Your OC is gone. Your quarterback's gone. All that's true. This is the next step for Ryan Day. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. How many times did we finish a college football season and talk about how Bama staff was going to look completely different because both the coordinators were gone to the NFL or took a head coaching job somewhere else in college? Same thing at Georgia. You saw it a few times with Todd Monken going to the NFL, and you had Dan Lanning get a job at Oregon as the head coach. Like, that's the price of success in college football. And so the reason why Kirby is who he is, why Nick Saban is who he is because they were able to adapt, retool their staff, promote the right places internally, go outside to get the right hires. They were able to adapt and roll with the punches of what modern college football is. Here's another spoiler. If Ohio State wins a national championship next year, there will be more pieces that leave from the staff. There'll be more guys that get big-time jobs. So if you're Ryan Day, you know what you signed up for. I don't think he's running from this. I don't think he's scared of this. It's going to look different. It was going to have to look different. But the work is definitely cut out for them now to replace a Chip Kelly and a Jim Knowles. And I cannot wait to see how Ryan Day responds because that's going to define him, I believe, here when it comes to his long-term success in Columbus and winning more national championships. So again, my vote here is very openly for Brian Hartline. I think it makes too much sense with his track record, having been in Columbus for the last however many years, and him eventually going to be a head coach at some point in time. Being the play caller next year makes too much sense, especially on the heels of them winning a national title. Let's keep everybody in-house that was there for that. Let's keep the temperature the same as much as possible. Let me know your thoughts, though. For Cato on the ones and two, for myself, J.D. PicKell, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We will keep this party rolling all offseason long and into the future. We will see y'all next time.